Well, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. Happy Star Wars Day, everybody. It's May the 4th, and I'm going to do a video that has been on my mind for a long time, and it's interesting how the passage of time has changed what this video was going to be. I want to bring up Jar Jar Binks, and specifically how I have had various conversations in the past, over the last 20-odd years, where people have said to me, wait a minute, you like Jar Jar Binks? Yes, I do. At least I like the fact that he exists, and I want to use that as my kind of way to loop into just a conversation in general about the Phantom Menace, the first Star Wars chapter. So that's really what this video is, but with a little asterisk on the, yes, I do like Jar Jar Binks, and I'm going to be talking more about him as well, the goofball. So the Phantom Menace came out in 1999. I still got my Obi-Wan lightsaber here, trying to do my best Obi-Wan impersonation. I was going to try and do the little rat tail thing, but that just wasn't going to work. So, yeah, big lead up to the film. A lot of people very excited, but the end result, people were not thrilled with, and I liked it. I think it made a lot of really bold choices. And I've always wanted to defend the Phantom Menace because it got so much hatred for so much time, specifically Jar Jar Binks. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to have to do like a proper defense of the Phantom Menace, specifically Jar Jar Binks. I've waited a long time to really prepare myself for it because I've talked about the original trilogy a lot, not anything else. And I thought maybe I should visit some of those other films, specifically like The Phantom Menace and the other prequels, and just describe why I like them mostly. Or at least why I like The Phantom Menace for today, for this Star Wars Day. Now, I do say it's interesting, the timing on this, amazing. It's amazing how time will heal all wounds, because if I had had this conversation 20 years ago, people would have torn a strip off me saying, no, Phantom Menace is garbage, that Jar Jar Binks deserves to burn in hell, I hate that, what they've done with Star Wars. And then Disney took over, and it's amazing how people are now a lot more tolerant and a lot happier about the George Lucas version of the story outside of the original trilogy than what has happened in recent years. So here's me, all prepared to go to the ropes to defend the Phantom Menace and Jar Jar Binks, but really, I don't need to as badly as I may have 20-odd years ago. So, what do I like about the film? Okay, well, I thought when I heard George Lucas was going to make the prequel, I was like, okay, you got a lot of things you got to talk about. And then when I heard that Anakin was just going to be a little 9-year-old kid, I thought, you got a lot of territory that you have to cover between episode 1 and episode 4. How are you going to do it? How are you going to make Jake Lloyd get to proto Darth Vader within a 3-movie span? But, okay. I really liked where they went with a lot of stuff. Specifically, I was so thrilled as a long time, since the 70s, Star Wars fan, to read up on a lot of names that I had heard bouncing around for the longest time, like Mace Windu, like Palpatine. Qui-gon Jinn was in those early proto scripts, or at least had been mentioned many times in like the comic books as well from the 70s. From what I gather, when George Lucas was writing up the script for this, it was originally going to be not so much Qui-Gon, mostly Obi-Wan in a slightly older role. At the last minute, he changed it and made Qui-Gon the father figure, who is, of course, spoiler, going to die at the end of the film. Thus, Obi-Wan takes over as kind of the big brother of Anakin. And that makes for a much more interesting dynamic between those characters, because we've seen the father-son relationship thing done so many times as a, Luke and Obi-Wan or Merlin and Arthur thing, that to do it again with Qui-Gon and Anakin would have, with an older Obi-Wan and Anakin would have been a bit pedestrian. So I like the fact that George Lucas thought, no, gonna tweak this a bit, gonna make it Qui-Gon Jinn is sort of our main Jedi, with Obi-Wan playing second fiddle a lot. He dies and then Obi-Wan has to take it over. And there are other parts of the original prequel trilogy address that in some neat ways. But we're not getting to the other films, we're just talking The Phantom Menace. So I guess now I need to really discuss why it is that Jar Jar is good, in my opinion. So, Jar Jar, as written up and as performed and as represented in a lot of crazy merchandise of the time, I don't know that had I been on set at the moment that a lot of the filming was going on and Ahmed Best was doing the voice that he intended to use, I don't know that I would have really recommended. I think if I had the chance to tap George Lucas on the shoulder, I might have said, I'd have toned him down a bit. I like the fact that he's there, but I get why a lot of people at that time really didn't like him. He was over the top, very childish in a way that really got a lot of cringe from a lot of the audience, especially having come off years of no Star Wars at all and kind of relying on comic books and novels and video games to fill in the gaps of what has been going on in our universe. So to suddenly be shoved this goofball, harebrained, flopsy character that is annoying, I get why people didn't like him. But I like the fact that he existed because we have a modern equivalent. In the original trilogy, people made comments. Siskel and Ebert made comments about C-3PO being the annoying character. Then I remember being in the theater and the Jawas running around and capturing R2-D2, and they were cute. They were little childish, funny little characters. Sure, they had a scary element to them, but they were that whimsical little elf-like creature at the side of the road element that I thought was so important to what Star Wars was all about. And then same with Empire Strikes Back, which is the darkest of the original trilogy. But Yoda, when he first appears, is that crazy little gremlin guy. It's that thing that kids can understand and immediately hold on to. Of course, the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi were the poster child of what people really didn't like with how the original trilogy went. It's like, oh God, now we've got teddy bears fighting with us? Jeez. But after enough years after the finishing of the original trilogy, people kind of got a little cooler with Ewoks. And I remember thinking to myself, when all of the video games and novels and comic books afterward were coming out, there was none of that whimsical little childlike appealing character. You had R2 and 3PO there, but they were not, first of all, they're not in the forefront, and second of all, they were never handled as the something a little kid can latch onto element that they were in the original trilogy, if that makes sense. I found that all the books, all the comics were very angsty and very dark. You know, Admiral Thrawn and all of the new Shadows of the Empire stuff and Rogue Squadron and all that kind of stuff. It's all like, this is an adult universe now and Boba Fett is out there and we're going to have to do things. And it was all gone. The childlike element was gone until Jar Jar Binks showed up. When he was on screen, I was like, okay. Thankfully, George Lucas has decided to continue the tradition of maintaining that thing that little kids can adhere to and enjoy. And I've heard a few interviews with Ahmed Best about, he was actually the voice that not a lot of people like. He was using a voice, a style of talking that he used to do when he was reading stories to his niece and nephew. Like, he was that kind of cartoony voice that he used in a family scenario. He brought that to his performance as Jar Jar Binks, and I just thought, man, that's so sad that everybody is giving him grief for this over-the-top performance in a way that I thought was a very good thing to have around. So that is sort of in a nutshell my defense of Jar Jar Binks. And I find it again interesting. It's amazing how time will heal all wounds. Nowadays, the people who would have been giving off about this annoying childlike character are now super jazzed about Baby Yoda. He's on all the posters, he's in all the backpacks, he's on the little bumper stickers. People love Baby Yoda. It's that young something anybody can glom onto and enjoy. If you're not into the angsty war part of Star Wars, you can enjoy Baby Yoda. That's what Jar Jar Binks was back in the day. He was at least an attempt. That's what they were reaching for, is that thing that kids would enjoy. And I was very appreciative to see him on screen happening in the movie, and I wouldn't have done it the way George Lucas wrote it and the way Ahmed performed it and all the various other elements, but I was glad to see he was there. Yeah, Phantom Menace, the film overall, outside of the Jar Jar element, had so many things that I really appreciated about it. Being able to see, as I say, Qui-Gon Jinn brought to life, and Mace Windu, especially. That name had been bouncing around early proto-scripts and some parts of the comic books for years. To finally meet these characters. Loved that about the film. Also, now this is going to sound weird, I really appreciated, in the time that George Lucas was writing the first script, he continued the mythological Arthurian fantasy, fairy tale story element that I think was very unpopular in the late 90s. Case in point, the one that I always remember, a lot of references to prophecy and Chosen One and that kind of stuff, which in the late 90s, people were very much like, no, go out and make your own career, be your own instigator of your future. So to have a plot line that involved these wise samurai warriors discovering, I think this is the Chosen One, and he will bring balance, and this kind of outside of my sphere of influence plot line was very brave. Secondly, I love the bit at the beginning of the pod race. Qui-Gon is, giving Anakin a few points, a little pep talk to make him feel good about getting out there. He says something that I will never forget. He says, feel, don't think, trust your instincts. May the Force be with you, and off Anakin goes to do the race. And I remember thinking at the time, we are in an era, late 90s, of like, become an entrepreneur, start your own personal business, expand your investment portfolio, go out there, think, don't feel. Do something. Become the instigator of your own future. And here's Qui-Gon Jinn telling our main character, one of the heroes of the story, the opposite. No. Get in tune with the living force. Go with instincts. Go with primal energies that you are perceiving. Don't think. And I thought, wow, George, that is pretty brave to write that up in this current culture of everybody getting out there and becoming their own boss and stuff. I thought, I like that George is that brave. That takes some chutzpah. Final thing that I also really, really loved as part of that was the pod race itself. I just loved that sequence. I thought I went to see Phantom Menace multiple times, 5 or 6 times in the theater, because I loved all of these things. I loved the pod race. I loved the excitement. I got the pod race game both for PC and on N64. No, the sequel on PS2. Pod Racer 2, whatever it's called. And I loved them, and I always thought, yeah, this is sort of capturing, it doesn't have the attack on the Death Star thing. There is the fight at the end of the film, which is, okay, the film has its problems. I will not doubt. The fact that Anakin is just button mashing on a joystick and ends up destroying the Federation ships. There's a lot of problems with Phantom Menace if you want to get critical, but this is Star Wars we're talking about. So we'll give a little bit of leeway on some of the plot devices and some of the holes. In large, I love The Phantom Menace. I really think it is an excellent film, and I am so happy that here, 20 years later, there's been so much sludge coming out of Disney's control of Star Wars that now I can quite happily say, yeah, no, Phantom Menace was really good, and not worry about too much backlog or people striking back at me against that because they think, no, Phantom Menace was awful. There's been much worse that has come out ever since, and I'm glad to say I can now carry my appreciation for the Phantom Menace without much worry or guilt. Anyway, so yeah, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I really, really like it, and I like the fact that Jar Jar Binks was in it and was present in a way that I could appreciate the childlike element that he represented. I'm so glad it was there. Yeah, it is true. I like Jar Jar Binks. Well, have a happy Star Wars day, everybody, and until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.